Bruce Linton joins me now of BruceLinton.com, among others. Bruce, welcome back.
Yeah, well, it doesn't even seem to be an option. James says, come, I show up.
That's right. So you've got all these logos all over your body, and I've seen a few press releases with those logos incorporated, and so it sounds like you've made some moves post-canopy.
Yep.
Tell me about your strategy going forward. You're not going whole hog on any of these things per se.
No.
You're an advisor and an executive chairman.
Yeah, so, and I do have more of these shirts, like I can move the badge around, because your viewers are probably thinking, man, Bruce probably smells bad because he's had that shirt since like Tuesday. So what I try to do, and you know, you and I chat a lot, so I'm always trying to figure out, why do I have anything to offer James in a conversation? Where do I get my information from? What do I know about? And part of what's happened is in the past I could actually meet with like the Minister of Health for something, or the head of the bureaucracy. And it could be in Germany, or it could be in England, or it could be in Canada. I can meet with the provincial leaders, and I could meet with state leaders. And as soon as I was off the field, I immediately knew that I had to either come back in within 3 months or never come back, because you're no value, your texture disappears. So I wanted to be able to have a conversation about dogs, big animals, mammals, all of them. I wanted to be able to have a conversation about prohibition around psychedelics. So because listen, the reason I started in the cannabis space is my observation was that prohibition was a terrific barrier behind which there was probably all kinds of potential intellectual property, and if you did it right, you could actually get going big enough and create value through IP and execution. So I look at psychedelics as simply things that have been poorly governed, and I don't think that the therapeutic potential has been properly explored. And I'm not talking just psilocybin, I'm talking about a broad spectrum of psychedelics, that there are pockets, like you can do certain things in Australia for trials that you can't do in, say, Canada or the US.
Sure.
And so this one, which is poorly run, it's Mind Medicine. It's a private company, but they've been really working at it, putting some really good researchers together for a few years. And so I bought, I think I own about 8 or 10% of it, and I'm going to sit as the chair. And it allows me to actually get into that conversation, which I think will be, it's not for parties. This is going to be like, suppose someone has self-harming, depressive state thoughts, or someone has a condition which maybe it's a little bit where sometimes if people have a certain condition, when they have feelings, actually become sort of thoughts and facts. And so they use microdosing of LSD, but the problem with microdosing of LSD is that it's not regulated, they don't have mechanisms of delivery, and it's not good. And so there's other things which are very good for weaning people from opioids. And if you play with the molecules, maybe you can reduce the hallucinogenic effect, and so Mind Medicine's got a trial ready to go to the FDA for that. So I like that one. And then maybe you should use a shirt as like a bra. So,
a whiteboard.
Well, and so like, what I like with the better dog food or dog care areas, they have a whole bunch of direct-to-consumer pieces that they put together through acquisitions, which means they have a platform for income and customers. What they really want to do is, and they have a mission which I aligned with, is great, we're going to work on dogs. We're going to think about old dogs. We're going to think about anxious dogs. We're going to do a lot of that stuff. But I also like, once we do that, I want to do it in a way that the trials are designed so that it could actually work with mammals, period, that have 4 legs. So like, maybe there's a way that certain conditions that you might want to think about for swine, and start disrupting spaces that go bigger than just the domesticated dog.
Sure, that's actually interesting. There's a group developing a CBD feed additive for the pork industry, because 15% of pigs in the process of being grown from piglets to slaughter die from nervous attacks.
Well, and not just that, there's a whole affliction. So when a pig is stressed, it may not eat, and if it does eat, it doesn't gain mass.
Right.
So effectively what you're doing is having it hang around rather than go to the end point at the target time and as fast as possible with the least amount of food.
Right.
And so I think there's a big part there. If you think
Nobody likes a skinny pig.
No, and if you think about dairy cattle, they need to bring in protein so they can actually make more milk. So maybe there's a CBD hemp paste there. So what I want to think about is first the dogs, focus on that, but I want to be able to then say, have we done this research in a way that it opens up other doors? And then if we move up, Gage just opened their first really flagship store in Michigan. And so when I went down there, like what I wanted to see, and when I was running around looking at places, I wanted to see that from the way they produce the cannabis, count, control, harvest, trim, products they make, brands they have, that they're doing the full thing, the best that I think you could do. And when I looked at a bunch of the places around the US, these guys are top notch. And so as Michigan goes from kind of a medical system to both as we get to 2020. I think these guys are locked and loaded to do it right. Very good at what they do, very interesting and good capital in there. There's not a lot of, sort of, oh God, why did you sell that guy a stock? It's actually clean. I was supposed to have an MSO done. And an MSO ends up being a multi-state operator.
I thought that was the trading symbol.
Yeah, no, so it's just beautiful fashion, Jamie. But with that is they're much bigger market caps.
Right.
The deals are complicated because in all these, what I want to have is equity exposure that's greater than the cash I put in because I'm going to put a lot of work in. And the MSO one, therefore, maybe needed potentially shareholder approval and or listing exchange approval. And so that one got delayed. And so that means that I'm kind of having, to work through that over the weekend probably. And these two down here, SLANG and DNA. SLANG is, it's trading under $1.
We've had Peter Miller in before.
Yeah, so Peter and Billy have something good going, but they did some of the things that people do when they first list. They listen to people. Shouldn't listen to people.
Right.
Somebody tells you got to do guidance. You know what guidance is? This. Hey, watch me. This is watch what I do. It's just you don't need to do that. So we need to, with SLANG, it's get back to the focus of the business, continue to execute, which they're good at, pull the trigger on the acquisitions as they have them, and let people understand why an 85-cent stock is going to become a $1 stock, and why $1 stock done the right way becomes a $1.50 stock. And before you know it, they're not thinking about why should I not sell some of this? They'd be thinking about why I wish I bought more of it.
Right.
And so we got to work on that. And DNA genetics, these guys. I
know Don and Aaron.
Don and Aaron are
Well, actually,
great.
I know Don. I should say I've not met Aaron, though I was sitting across from him recently.
These guys I met probably 6 years ago.
Right.
And because I don't know anything, I organized a breakfast meeting in, I think it was Denver, with these guys on I think it was a Saturday. Now, if you know Don and Aaron, especially then, you do not organize breakfast meetings at like 7:30 in the morning on a Saturday, because I don't know if they've ever been to a breakfast meeting before. And what I've seen over the time, though, is these guys have gone from, they love the life, great growers, good party, to they like that stuff, but they also have learned a ton about business, structure, licensing. And if you look back at their history, they were in California, they were doing their stuff, and they realized if we don't move to the Netherlands and do our work there, we could have some headaches. So they spent quite a lot of time in Holland doing their genetic work. So they were sort of in the mix with, you couldn't really say Sensi, greenhouse, and exclude DNA from the conversation. And the stuff they've made, I know that it sells well because it does in Canada, and I know that people respect it because I think they've won more cannabis cups than anyone else.
Is DNA public already?
No, so they're a private company,
okay.
And what I think that has to happen for them is their business model needs to be explained because it's a lot of leverage on a licensing model. They've recently done an acquisition, so they picked up one of their customers became part of theirs, so they can actually have a sort of a grow to show. And I think they're ready to become. They've got a really good management team around. They're ready to become a public company. So I wanted to invest before they're there.
All right. Yeah, I met with Charles. Actually, Charles was on our show in Los Angeles. He was one of the first guys on our show.
Yeah. Charles is
actually
super sharp.
Don has been on our show with Allison Gordon from 48 North interviewing him, which was hilarious. So that's an interesting.
Charles impressed you a bit.
Charles is very impressive. Oh yeah, Charles is the businessman in the crowd, obviously, and I'm sure you met Rez, who's their corporate development, who's actually the brand ambassador extraordinaire, if you ask me.
I would say he is, and Aaron is probably one of those people like, you and I, if we get those flat hats and we get it to go over our ears, I don't think I look very good with that. Aaron looks like $1 million, and he's like, he is the grower, he's the breeder, he's in the scene, and he is one of those guys that, he has a lot of ideas that seem kind of out there when he says them, and 2-3 years later, they make a lot of sense. 5 years ago, he's like, why isn't all Gatorade filled with CBD and get rid of that other crap? Because it would actually be way better for sports recovery than stupid Gatorade.
Absolutely.
And that sounds common sense now.
Right.
5 years ago, when you're saying Gatorade should be in the business or they should get run over, he was kind of out there.
Right, no doubt. So then, overall, you've become more of an investor, an advisor, than an operational manager.
Yeah, I'm not going to be. I can't be hired to be a CEO. The issue is unless I'm fully. It's my thing, my way, and I got to go and do it. Right now, what I want to do is be in the conversation with the regulators. I want to be in the strategy discussion. I want to be part of that part, but I don't want to do anybody's annual review.
Right.
I'm terrible at those. Even by the time, so really the reason Cannabis worked pretty well was Zakulin, Mark, he ran down everything in. And I ran out. Board, money, media, a lot of meetings with regulators.
Right.
If I go in, I got to bring somebody like Zakulin, and he's still got a job, and then he has a non-compete.
Sure.
Because, like, I think annual reviews, for example, if you work for me, you don't need an annual review. If you're still there at the end of the year, I like you. You're good. You're doing a great job. Keep working. If you're not doing a good job, I fired you, and you're not here at the end of the year.
Right.
I find that's pretty clear.
That's a pretty obvious outcome for an annual review.
And if I see you and I think, I don't want to give you any more options, that means that we're not on the same page. So we'll talk about why I don't want to give you more options.
Yeah.
And what it would take to become more valued that I actually, because options are really a way to like say, I want a future with you here.
Okay.
And if I don't feel that, then we should talk about it because there's some issue.
Are you concerned at all of overextending yourself across too many brands to the point where your effect on the the visual effect, the valuation effect of the Bruce Linton effect becomes diminished because you're perceived to be overextended?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's going to be some people who think that. My worry was more that I get blindsided because I get really narrowly focused and I only do something that aims at geriatric dogs. And I put all my time and money there. Because in Canopy, what worked was having a global perspective across everything from what we were doing with the Beckley Foundation in the UK, which had a long history in psychedelics and things, to what we were doing with animal care, because we had a whole bunch of stuff going on there, to what we were doing with extraction, production, brand development, brand building, brand placement in 16 countries and 10 places in Canada. And so what I liked is knowing how Germany was influencing what was becoming the best plan that you could come up with for Spain, Greece, or Portugal. And I need to be able to see on the US, what was starting to happen is we looked a lot, got to know Acreage, got that deal done. I wanted to be able to know that we would, at some point in time, have a platform there, but I wanted to know what were the conversations with the governors, who was pushing what was the real agenda. Now I can go to that again. And so I think this combination simply means that I'm not going to be out of the conversation on enough of the breadth to actually be really informed. And so, I think a lot of people think, well, you should just do one thing and do it really deeply. Like, I started Canopy and I was still running for 5 years at the beginning, Martello. So I had 2 full-time jobs there. And then for the last 2.5, 3 years, I was in the back trying to make Rockify, which is the thing that's just coming along. And so like, I guess I've never been perfect at just doing one thing. And this is I feel like it's a much lesser load by far than I had when I was trying to build and create Canopy.
Cool. All right, where's the next great frontier in the cannabis space globally that has been underexploited in your opinion?
So I just flip it upside down and say, who's your customer? So if you're doing geriatric care and you're making the aged environment way less full of pharmaceuticals, less drug-on-drug interaction, and creating an environment, it's going to become a differentiator for those environments that support that and do that. And the companies that make those products are going to be massively disruptive to anybody who's a pharmaceutical company who goes after that cohort. I don't think we've explored, I still think that CBD can become free, because if people grow the right kind of hemp and do the right things, they can actually monetize the other aspects of the plant. And so maybe that's where if you had free CBD and you went to that company that you mentioned with the swine product, they could actually offer to put their supplement in for free and take the upside shared yield gain of the 15% not being stressed and dying.
Right.
And so I think that the model's going to change over and say, like, how am I doing a great job by niche? And so those are two, like, I love animal care. I love this. I think it's going to be a little longer road, but the therapeutic possibilities of other psychedelics, I think, is totally misunderstood. And as big states, like, people don't get, like, Michigan's a big deal. It's a big state. They have already a high consumption rate. When states flip over to go from a single kind of medical to really everything, it's kind of like, here, half of Canada just did this today. It's a big deal. So
yeah.
I think being really strong in a single state is going to probably be interesting, because the MSOs are kind of like this, and they might start wanting to buy those really strong in a single state ones.
Right. Do you think the proliferation of outdoor hemp and cannabis in Canada is going to be a game changer for the economics of concentrates going forward because of the massive supply of outdoor grown feedstock that's coming?
I think so, and I think if you're in that business, it'll be compression. But I don't know how much effect it has really on back to who's your customer. So, I've been a big advocate of beverages. I think that the format will, now that we see how this, headwinds of vaping and stuff. I keep coming back to the fact that something that goes glug, glug, glug and goes through you is a lot different than inhale. And so in a good beverage, if it has 2 or 2.5, 3 milligrams in a single serving, if that becomes like 3 cents of input or is 10 cents of input, it almost has zero effect on the actual sale margin of that product.
We had a party with a group of prototype beverages, homemade of course, and it was funny because I think the dosage was about 2 to 3 milligrams per 12-ounce serving, and by 10 o'clock the party was almost silent because everybody had 2 or 3 and was sufficiently high that it became a very different kind of party. It'll be interesting to see how the beverages play out.
Well, and which ones you want to make, right? Like that quiet experience, those might be good beverages to serve if people are going at an art gallery.
Or a yoga class.
They might might not be the best choice if you're going to a comedy club.
Right.
When did the audience all die? No, they're just in their own head.
Or you're going to give a speech.
But so I think really when you see compression on price per milligram, I'm not sure it has a material effect, positive or negative, on finished goods.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and we're seeing a continuation of the devaluation of the cannabis sector globally in the publicly traded realm. Do you think that's a byproduct of the vape sort of crisis that is sort of causing cannabis to be perceived as being fundamentally part of that problem?
I'd say maybe. I think part of it is there's just no other current amazing news. So suppose all of a sudden the U.S. House and Senate start getting a little active on the topic. You could see that sparking things up. You could see when people start rolling out and showing what the packaging is like and the images of the 2.0 products, that'll help. There's at least a few cannabis companies that are doing phase 2 and some phase 3 trials that I bet they'll start reading at the end of this year, beginning of next year. And if they can start reading data that says, in fact, this does this in this dosage, deliver this way, those are market-moving things. Right now all we can talk about is apparently you shouldn't vape vitamin E, and apparently CannTrust can find new ways to get in more challenges. And for those people watching, if the stock's still $1 and you're holding it, why? Why are you holding the stock? Why
I can't imagine why it still goes up.
How? Maybe someone will buy the property and grow more illegal cannabis, but why are you buying and holding the stock?
Right.
I don't get it. I got a call yesterday from a journalist, and they said, what do you think is going to happen with those assets? And I said, well, I know it should have happened a long time ago. They should have been bought by somebody, and the assets get used. Now we're in a domain once you have your licenses, they're gone, right? I think they've just they said this is no longer a licensed site, and the site's not licensed. You can't do anything.
Well, and licenses are non-transferable, anyways.
Right, but you think you're the regulator, and to a regulator, this is the scene of a triple homicide, basically.
Yeah.
So do you think the regulator's going to say, well, the triple homicide, that wasn't really traumatic for me. I'm okay with relicensing this site. It just feels like it'd be very hard to get people really comfortable to relicense there right away.
Yeah.
I think I would be, people are people, and that's
right.
That's
I'm hoping it accumulates a huge discount because of that perception, and buy it for pennies on the dollar, and then relicense it, change the name, and drive on. It'll be forgotten in this atmosphere of 20-second news cycles eventually. But anyways, Bruce.
Or what could happen is it gets so cheap. You could buy it and grow the world's most secure tomatoes, which was back to my plan B in case I didn't get a license in Smiths Falls.
Right.
And those, who knows?
High-tech tomatoes.
You could have I hope someone puts a lid on it. It's no more topic.
Lipocene, which is a major compound in tomatoes, is shown to have great qualities for antioxidants in skin, preventing you from aging. So I think there might be a future there.
World's most secure tomatoes.
Bruce, let's leave it there for now. Thanks very much for joining me as usual.
Thanks, man.